The Get On Living Safely campaign is sponsoring this podcast to remind you to keep your spending in the community. Supporting local businesses keeps food on the table for our friends and neighbors. Follow them on social media and learn more at getonlivingsafely.com. On this episode, we chatted with Nick Roush. This entrepreneur has been part of La Crosse's business community for a while. He's owner of Roush Rentals and owns and teaches at the Root Down Yoga Studio on Caledonia Street in La Crosse's north side. Nick talks about community service and gives us insight on the new Get On Living Safely campaign. You can find more conversations on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is La Crosse Local.
So my name is Nick Roush, and I was born in La Crosse, so born and raised, and been here all our lives. And I always say ours, like Mandy and I, my wife, been here since go. And how did I get into entrepreneurship? Great question. Both my parents were self-employed, so they owned their own businesses growing up. My dad was in the commercial flooring business my whole life, and my mom was in the beauty business and owned a salon and was self-employed her whole life as well. So I kind of grew up in that self-employed entrepreneurship family. And then I worked in the HVAC industry, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, for like 20 years after college. That industry sort of lent itself to lots of entrepreneurship because I was in sales roles and calling on customers and doing all that kind of stuff, big account roles and whatever. And then that sort of transitioned into all the other entrepreneurial things that I've gotten into since then. So I kind of born and raised in that spirit.
You've been part of La Crosse's Northside community for a while. Businesses, Root Down Yoga, Roush Rentals. You're also a big part of the North La Crosse Business Association. Why do you feel that organizations like that are so important?
I think organizations like the NLBA, North La Crosse Business Association, are so important because it's really grassroots. Like, we're there in representation of the small business climate on the North Side. And we reach outside of that a lot too, especially with the campaign that we've got going now that we can talk about later. But it's really just about that connection with the heart of small business and what that means in our community, how small business can engage with community and work together to improve things for everybody. But it's really that grassroots small starts connection with that small business person and their employees that matters the most to me about that.
It seems like your endeavors, they do have a large giving back component to them. You do the basic kind of karma classes with your yoga studio, but it always seems to be that you're doing something. Why is the local community so important?
You know, the reality is, without community, what do we have, right? Like, if we can't take care of, I'll zoom back a little bit, and yoga kind of comes into this, right? So if we look at the broad scale of what's happening in the world, right, and we think about all the challenges that we face as a community, that we face as a world, I'm sort of helpless to solve the big problems if I can't help and solve the problems right here at home, right? Like, if I can't love my neighbor, how can I love the world? If I can't heal relationships on a small scale and take care of relationships on a small scale, then I'm sort of powerless to heal relationships on a grand scale. So to me, it always starts community first and works out from there. And when I look at what we've done with the studio and what we do with North La Crosse Business Association with the studio, we've had our Karma Class program since the day that we had opened. And I just did a little math before we got on today. And as it turns out, the Karma Class, through its efforts, we've donated a little over $40,000 to local charities since the day we opened. And when I look at the Karma for COVID portion of that, because as soon as the pandemic happened, we started hosting Karma classes in Karma for COVID because we knew there would be great needs here in La Crosse. And again, I'm just so proud of the generosity of our community at Root Down and all the people that donated. And we were able to raise a little over $14,000 since the beginning of the pandemic that got distributed to local charities in time of need. So anyway, not to toot our horn, that's our students that do that work. We just show up and teach the classes and try to love them all we can. But for us here in the community, that karmic aspect and taking care of where we're at home is the most important thing.
So a recent collaboration called Goals, Get On Living Safely. It's organized by a number of business owners and organizations. What is the purpose of this program? I've seen it on billboards. I see it on social media. What are people supposed to do with this?
Great question. So Get On Living Safely is a county-wide multimedia campaign that started with the North Lacrosse Business Association with a ton of help from Engage Greater Lacrosse to make that happen. And what it's all about, I'm going to say there's a few facets. The first one is it's really about community education and helping people understand why their financial choices and making investments in their community makes so much difference to the lives of their neighbors, families, jobs, and dreams, right? When we take care of people at home, we're taking care of our neighbor. And we're also there to educate and talk a little bit about how that actually spins back and helps the person too, and how money turns in lacrosse and in a local community. And when you spend locally, 70% of that money stays in the community and continues to work. I like to think of our local community like an ecosystem, right? So the flower can't live without the bee, right? Mm-hmm. And so our local community can't flourish without the patronage of our local consumers. And really inside of this, it's not just the business owners and the businesses, it's all of their employees, right? And their employees' families. And so, if I give the example of Caledonia Street, somebody goes and buys a bicycle at the bike shop, and then the person from the bike shop can afford to go across the street and buy a watch for their wife. And then the person from the jewelry store can go down to the Uptown Cafe and have lunch. And then the person who works at the Uptown Cafe can go to the yoga studio for a class. And then somebody from the yoga studio can afford to take their kids to Bebop and Bundles to learn about music. And then they get interested in music and walk across the street and buy a ukulele from Old Town Strings. And so it's that ecosystem, that the education of that piece. That's one for Get On Living Safely. Two, it's helping businesses realize you're not alone. We're all in this challenge together. And through all of us uniting in voice, we can help re-inspire both the motivation and the confidence of the consumer to get re-engaged with local economy. And there's some pretty crazy numbers that sit inside of all this. We've done a lot of math, working backward through sales tax data to find out what's happening in our local economy. And so when we look at the businesses that make up I'm going to say the fabric of our community, like all the stuff that makes the greater La Crosse area great, the restaurants, the bars, the entertainment industry, hotels and hospitality, the personal services, places like the gyms and the yoga studios and salons and all that kind of stuff. When we look at the numbers, pandemic through the end of the year, we're projecting that those industries will experience a loss in revenue of somewhere on the order of about $190 million. Oh. And that's just La Crosse County. So to put that in perspective, that's like double the entire city of La Crosse's operating budget, right? Or double La Crosse School District's budget for the year. So this is a massive hole in our economy. And the other interesting part, and I'll stop talking about numbers and we can get back into conversation, is that when we look at total sales, they're actually up year over date for all industries. So when we dug into data further, what we realized is the money is still being spent, so the capacity for consumption is still there. But instead of being spent locally, now it's being spent online. And all that money is leaving our economy right here in La Crosse to help our neighbors and help our families, right? And I'll put a period on that sentence by saying, I am really sure that Amazon is not going to show up with a truck of money to help La Crosse. So with that, that's kind of the numbers and the backstory of what Get On Living Safely is all about.
I didn't actually realize that. You hear COVID's happening, people are in dire straits, but for people to continue to spend money and maybe think that it's, of course, a little safer to spend online while it's a detriment to their community. So as we look at our spending habits locally, how can people and businesses, they're busy, this is a lot of great information, but how can they kind of jump in? Like, what's just one thing that they could do that's not overwhelming in some way to get started?
I would sum it up right now in two phrases. Number one, do what you can to choose community over convenience. And in choosing community over convenience, what I mean is, you're about to click on the buy it now button and it's going to show up, right? And before that moment, can you choose to pause and ask yourself the question, can I buy this thing locally, right? In a way that's safe for me and that, with hands-free or drop off, pick up package, whatever it is, can I buy this thing locally and can I make a choice to shop as small and local as I possibly can? Like, does that work? And for lots of retail, things, you can. And then the other piece is, can I choose to move my consumption from a material perspective, maybe more back to an experience perspective? So instead of buying, the thing on Amazon or whatever it is to check the Christmas box for somebody, can I choose to buy that person a couple of gift certificates to our favorite restaurant? And so I'm giving the gift of experience versus giving the gift of stuff, right? And if it is a stuff thing I'm looking for, can I consume that locally? So really, it's just like press pause and can I choose community over convenience? And inside of that right now, because it's the holiday season, can I choose to keep Christmas in the community? And whatever spectrum of wherever you're at with regard to, you want to go into the store, you don't want to go in the store, there's still tons of options available to you. It's just a little bit of effort. And the kind of the end of that is, what investment through your consumption are you willing to make in the community that you want to return to? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that, community over convenience. So over the past, whatever it's been since March, it seems like it's been really fast or it's been really slow, but, we've kind of adapted in personally everything from getting carry-out food, bringing it home, playing a game together, or putting together a puzzle. It's been quite the experience. So I could see how that could be something that people could also enjoy, over the holidays. How are you adapting to COVID?
We went through, when I talk about the studio, and I'll talk about business and then personally, right? So business-wise at the studio, at first what we did is shifted to online when we chose to close back in March. And we shifted to online as quickly as we could and did everything we could with regard to online classes. The only classes we were charging for online were the Karma classes. Everything else we did online, we put up YouTube classes that people could download and watch for free. So we didn't charge for that because we knew there would be a lot of financial need within our community, and giving people access to yoga was super important. And then when it got warm enough, we went to offering outdoor classes, right? And so we offered as many of those as we could to try to adapt. And then unfortunately this fall, as it got too cold to do outdoor classes, we had to make the hard decision to close the studio, hopefully to reopen at some point. But after sustaining some really substantial losses, kind of had to stop doing that because we couldn't fund it anymore to make that happen, again, with the hopes that we can reopen. And the tough part about keeping the virtual thing going is, as you might have experienced yourself, the world is going through a lot of virtual fatigue. Mm-hmm. Everybody is tired of looking at screens and they miss that in-person human connection because we're social animals. We just are. We need each other and we need to hug each other and all that, shake hands and do all that kind of stuff. We need that stuff. It's built into our DNA. So that's kind of where we adapted with the studio. With Roush Rentals, we doubled down on cleaning efforts and figuring out ways to show apartments through virtual tools, tours and stuff like that. Thankfully, we have a great software package that helps us do a lot of trading of paper back and forth without actually having to trade paper, and done everything we can to accommodate the needs of our tenants. And it's gone just super awesome. Love our tenants. We have so many great people that live with us. Really, really grateful for all of them. Personally, yeah, it's really been a chance to live my yoga, man. Let me tell you. Talk about exercises in patience and forgiveness and understanding. And, I don't purport to have it all figured out, but one thing's for sure, I've been handed a lot of lessons in patience and tolerance right now. And, the yogi in me would say that I'm not quite sure exactly what the lessons are we need to learn from all this yet, but we're learning them. And the thing that comes to my mind is I hope that as we navigate our way through this and we're able to look back on it, that hindsight will be a good teacher and not one veiled in blindness. It's sort of a yoga thing, that I'll be able to look back with the courage that we as a society will be able to look back with the courage of self-honesty to go, okay, here's the stuff we got really right. And here's the stuff we got really wrong. So that, when and if we go down this road again, which seems likely at some point, that we can learn something from our experience and try to do our best to take care of one another through that time as intelligently as possible.
I sure hope so. So if people want to start small and kind of find out information, where's the best avenue for them to go to start this process of investing in their community?
I would really encourage folks to go to our website, the Get On Living Safely website. It's just getonlivingsafely.com. And on there, you can find information for consumers about ways to help businesses with the things that you're doing. You can find information on businesses about how to get engaged. I do want to give a giant shout out to all of our donors that have helped make this campaign happen. A lot of really, really generous people to help make this happen, and people that are willing to make an investment in community. So I'd say we start with our website, sign up for updates, look at our Facebook, use our hashtag, which is hashtag GOLSWI, Goals Wisconsin. We've got all kinds of awesome video events updating folks on local businesses, what's happening with them, and how to get engaged with the campaign through our website.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Locals. Subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.